Welcome.
Thank you.
So excited to have you here.
It's great to be here.
And I think I want to start, I was thinking about how to introduce you to our audience here. And you are in so many places, in media, in materials. And I would love for you to tell us about your greatest hits. Tell us what is Sandow? What are you up to?
Well, we started the company in 2003. I wanted to build a media company. And in the early days, it was about building a very unique business. We wanted to think differently about everything we did. Every part of the media business that we loved so much. We wanted to, I hate to say innovate, but we wanted to make it different. We wanted to do something different. So over the years, we've either built, in the case of Lux, which was a tiny business in 2005, a startup. We built things like Lux from scratch, and then we acquired things. We bought an incredible brand, Interior Design. We built things. We today have an ecosystem of consulting companies, research companies. We work with some of the biggest companies in the world on very complex material issues. Research, lots of media, hundreds of events, digital, pretty much a very large, robust media foundation. And today, really the last 5 years, we look at what can we build on that media foundation. What are the new kinds of businesses, the tools, the services to build on top of that foundation of media.
I mean, we just had a panel about what's happening in the media. Did you always know you were going to build kind of a bigger brand on top of that media foundation, or was that something you've come to in the more recent years?
No, it started early on. One of the very first magazines we launched actually was in the beauty space today, is New Beauty. And 2 years into that magazine, we basically were the inventors and the originators of beauty subscription sampling businesses. That ended up being a much bigger business than the magazine business. So we've always thought differently. We've always wanted to rethink things, and we like to grow and experiment and try.
Well, we're going to pivot back into the design space and talk a little bit more about sampling. You have built Material Bank, and I want you to tell us a little bit about what that is. But I think what's so interesting for this audience is that you were looking at the landscape of the working interior designer and realizing that they didn't necessarily have the bandwidth or the time for sampling and the sampling process as it existed. So can you explain to us a little bit about what Material Bank is and really how that came to be and why you thought, what need you were thinking about when you built it?
Well, we started to see years ago something that today is obvious, but we started to see this a while ago, and it's the consumerization of B2B. And what that really means is we all live these lives of convenience. We walk outside, we get an Uber, we want something from Amazon, food, anything. It's a life of convenience in our personal lives. And then we go to work, and the B2B space in many cases doesn't work that way. It's in many cases backwards. And we saw this, and we saw this trend where especially younger people coming into the workforce, they want to work a different way. So they're demanding the conveniences they have in their personal lives in business. So we saw this consumerization happening, and we saw it in every part of our business. And we knew that building tools and services that helped our industry become ready for that. I always use the example of my 15-year-old daughter that has now grown up knowing I need batteries, we click a button and batteries show up magically. And that's not kind of interesting to her, it's just a fact. It's interesting to me. And I always use the example, when she's in the workforce in 10 years, she's not waiting, she's not going through friction, she is going to want it at the touch of a button. So this is happening every day across our entire industry. And the design industry needs to be ready, both residential and commercial, really for this coming consumerization. It's going to be, I sometimes say, it's sometimes, especially to people who have been in the industry for a while, it's really nice. To younger designers, it's a demand. It's an expectation.
And what are some of those things that are friction points? What are things that younger designers will come in and say, like, why do we do it like this?
Well, we looked at sampling. We looked at forget sampling for a minute. We looked at searching for materials. There's so many incredible brands in this country and around the world. These brands have 500, 1,000, 30, 50,000 SKUs. They introduce new products, and they all have something to say. But it's hard. How do you go across so many different materials? How could you ever build a library that's up to date? How could you build enough showrooms or enough salespeople? and especially on the commercial side, but even the residential side, how do you sort through it all? And what we wanted to do is, we studied this for years. I personally led a team that studied it both with the designers, residential, commercial, and with manufacturers. And we saw this incredibly big pain point. We saw something that was kind of slow, wasteful, not sustainable. And we thought if we could apply a lot of thinking and investment and streamline that process of searching and then sampling, we could solve a lot of problems and save a lot of time for the designer. And at the end of the day, when you talk to designers on both residential and commercial, time is number one. Time is everything.
Well, tell me about that. Let's talk about why time is important and how that fits into the business model of a firm. Because I know one thing we talked about was you were talking to designers and they were saying, I don't have time. And you were like, well, isn't your business
it was
based
interesting.
on...
Well, yeah, it was interesting. When we were doing a lot of the research, and I would sit with designers on both sides, and time was this overwhelming issue. I have to do more with less. I'm constrained on time. I go home, I deal with my kids, my family, I go back to work, time. It was always time. And I always thought, well, a lot of the firms work on billable hours. And like my lawyers, they love billable hours. The bills get bigger. And I met a principal of a big firm, and we were talking about this issue. And he said, Adam, do you know the real reason why time is such an issue for us? And I said, well, you want to do more. He said, no. He said, the issue is, no matter how we fill those RFPs out, little project, big project, no matter what we have to do to get that work, it always comes back, we want it faster, we want it cheaper. So he said, we have to be efficient to win the business. So it was not about we want to add billable hours. This was 2,000 hours of work, it needs to be done in 1,800 hours, or whatever the number is. How do I do more? I can't spend less time designing, less time with the client. So all those other pieces have to be compressed. So giving the industry tools to do that actually allows them to win business and grow their firms.
Totally.
And whether you're a very small one-man shop on the residential side or you're the biggest commercial firm, time is everything. And that goes back to ease and no friction.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about innovation, but tell us first how Material Bank works, just a quick overview, but also tell us how you got there, how you got to that as the kind of solution to that problem.
Well, we knew that aggregating data was important. And honestly, people have tried that. Back in the late 90s, people had tried to aggregate material and material data. And it failed. So we knew that aggregation of data was very important. But what we wanted to do to take away the friction was we coupled that. So very big database, obviously lots of technology on the website, making it very easy to do complex searches. We kind of would say we want to turn hours of work into minutes on the front end. So we built that. But we also knew that we had to build our own facility to actually, on the logistics side, also really blow designers away. We didn't want to have a better solution. We wanted to completely knock it out of the park. So we went to Memphis, Tennessee. We took an old building, a very large old building, basically a city block wide, and we built from the ground up a state-of-the-art logistics operation. And the reason we had to do that was I had this idea in my head. I wanted a midnight cutoff. I wanted to be able to have a designer in their bed at 11:45 at night on their iPad doing complex work and press a button, and every material that they want, I want that on their desk anywhere in the United States in one box at 10:30 the next morning. And in order to do that, there's one city on planet Earth, and that's Memphis, Tennessee, because FedEx has their global sorting facility, and you can go into FedEx, and as we do at about 2 o'clock in the morning. So we built this facility. We put a tremendous amount of thought, a lot of robotics. We have a tremendous amount of robotics in the facility that we implemented. Highly proprietary packaging, because we have to be able to take a package and put some bricks, some hand-painted wall covering, some paint samples, some laminate into one box, and you've got to be able to do it very efficiently and sustainably. So today, a designer can go on the site. It's only for the trade. It's only for the people that work in the industry, and request from almost 200 manufacturers any material, up to midnight, and 10:30 the next morning, one box, everything in that box.
How many of your orders come in at midnight?
You know, it's funny, we get 35% of our orders after 5 o'clock, 35%. And it was interesting, when we launched, we had no orders after 5 or 6 o'clock, none. And I actually said to my COO, I think I made a mistake. He didn't want to go late. I wanted to go late. And I said, I think I made a mistake. No one's ordering at 8 o'clock at night, the crickets. And we watched this progression that as the months in beta went on, to beta testing, the designers got confident that we could deliver. And we started getting 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Last night, we had a massive order come in at 11:58, 11:57. And we think designers play with us now to test us. But we get very large orders, and we get simple orders right up into the minute. And that's why we have the automation. But it's that comfort that once that happens once, you're like, this is great. Now I can wait till I go home, feed the kids, do the homework, hang out, watch this with my husband or wife, and go back to work. So we do that every day, and we're watching this steady migration of late night. And it's great. It's what makes the service kind of so unique, that it shows up in one box.
One of the things I love about the way Material Bank has evolved is how quickly you move. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit. You know, we've talked about time, but also talk about speed, because I think you approach innovation in a really unique but also kind of rapid fire way. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we those are the team members. We've got about 450 employees, and the team that works closest with me knows I have a kind of a crazy process. But we are very hands-on. We are constantly innovating. And I like to be vertical. I like to be vertically integrated. So early on in the days of building this company, we built our own digital printing department. Today we have our own fabrication shop, a full-blown, pretty talented group of people in a fabrication shop. So if we're building things, as we do in many cases, in the case of the material lab that we built in the Mart in Chicago, in 3 months, Erica Holborn and I, president of my company, and I were at the Mart, and we had an opportunity to take right next to Starbucks, if those of you know the Mart on the ground floor, 3 months before Neocon. And the Mart said, look, we'll do this, but how are you going to build something? And Erica's like, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And we built, designed, manufactured, installed some very complex technology and materials, and obviously furniture in 3 months. So I'm a hands-on guy. What we did is we took a page from the Apple playbook. If those of you know how Steve Jobs built Apple, he got a warehouse and built the store in a warehouse, which was very, very smart. And in our warehouse, we built the 800 square foot store, walls, everything finished. And we spent 2 months out of the 3 prototyping to feel good and do that. So I'm hands-on, and I need to move quickly, and I need to see it.
Well, you said to me, we walked through the space together in Chicago during Neocon, and one of the things, you showed me that tile, and you said, well, we had this idea, but the hard deadline of opening up in June meant that now it exists.
Yeah.
How does that work for your team?
Well, one thing tends to lead to another, and I think that in the industry that we all work and love, like just about every other part of this country, innovation is to me the most important thing. Businesses that don't innovate, and this is you've heard this 1,000 times, businesses that are not going to innovate are going to be in tremendous trouble. I don't think I don't think that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, things moved slow, and you could kind of do okay and survive. Today, things are moving so fast. Innovation is mandatory. So in the case of the store, we built this. I wanted to build kind of the material resource library of the future. So we've invested a lot of time in these incredible interactive tables that allow designers to digitally spread out all the materials and make them bigger and smaller and build this beautiful palette, and then press a button and the palette will physically show up the next day in that package. But we wanted physical materials. I built the store, and I stood back one night in the prototype space in the warehouse, and it felt like a phone store. It was technology. There were no materials. And I'm like, wait a minute. We're in the Mart. This is catered to people that are in the industry and designers. We love materials. The reason you need physical samples today, and you can't put on goggles, and I don't think we'll ever be in a position where you can put on goggles and a haptic feedback glove and simulate the feeling of that wall covering. You need to touch it and feel it. So we came up with this idea, and we created something in the matter of 6 weeks called Smart Swatches. And it was a proprietary system we designed in-house with an RFID chip, a magnet system, and we had a grid on the wall where you could take virtually any material and put it into this standardized system. And you could go to the wall and pick all these different materials in a single colorway, walk over to the table and just put it on the table, and up comes the material with every colorway. So it was a way for a designer to look at the sample and say, I love the texture of the leather, the pebble feels great, the feeling feels great, but this is red. What colors does it come in? And then use it and select the materials and have it sent to you. So it's a great example. That was not on our roadmap. Yeah. And that came from designing the store. And now we're rolling those out in 15 major commercial firms where we're building walls. And some of our 200 brands of manufacturers will be rotated through those walls in the architecture firms themselves on display, like micro trade shows. So it's that innovation feeling that we like. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things we talked about a little bit was when you move that fast, how does that give you kind of more opportunities to pivot or to step back and reevaluate and maybe go in another direction if it's not working quite the way you want?
That flexibility and not having so much rigidity helps. And I make my team crazy sometimes. In the case of the store, we literally scrapped it and I started over. It didn't feel right. So you have to be able to take risks. You have to be able to pivot. And I love working with a team. So I'll have a team. I can have the most junior person on the team say, I don't love that. And I'm like, all right, well, let's study that. And sometimes we come up with the best ideas because some person voiced a concern. I'm like, you're right. And we have so many examples of this where we come up with a better product in whatever thing, software, hardware, packaging. I mean, we spent a year on our packaging. And it was a collaborative effort with a lot of people where I'm leading it. But we've got really smart people saying, what about this? What about that? I mean, we add to larger orders on Material Bank these really fun M&Ms in this cool package. And it was my COO came in and he says, we should put candy in the box. I'm like, it's actually not a bad idea. And we do these M&Ms that are now, everyone loves these M&Ms that we send, these little yellow M&Ms with packages. They post them on Instagram. It's kind of fun. And it was my COO walking in saying, we should throw candy in the box. And it was a great idea. So we like that.
We've talked a little bit throughout the conference about kind of sustainability initiatives, and I know that was really something that you thought about as you were developing that new packaging you mentioned. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you've created and how that's changed what you're doing?
Sure. So from a sustainability point of view, we realized that the waste in sampling is pretty big. Millions and millions, hundreds of millions of pieces of samples are made and usually not recovered. What we didn't really know was how passionately and how strong designers feel about removing unwanted samples. And we started, version 1 was these really cool receptacles. And when you were a Material Bank firm, we'd send you a box and you'd throw anything you wanted in this box, send it back to our facility, and we had a team that would open the box and sort it, and if it was good, put it back on the shelf. If they were a manufacturer that was not in our program, it would go on another shelf, or it would be recycled. And what we saw was this incredible need for designers to feel that we were very sustainable. And because we had one central facility to ship from, that means that there's one place to ship back. So those of you in the industry, the design industry that get samples know that if you're doing a big project, you've got packages coming from 15 different companies and you rip them open and you go through them and now you've got stuff everywhere. Well, it's a puzzle to go send those back to the right people. With us, you just can send it back to one place. But what we saw was those large boxes were not working. We were getting so much junk. Dumps from firms, library dumps, old things. I mean, paint fans and books. It was pretty crazy. So what we did is we redesigned the tray. So most of our material orders come in a really cool tray in a large FedEx box. And again, I sat with this tray on my desk and I said, how can we make this reusable? And the new tray now, you open it up, take your materials out, and you pull the bottom up, and it folds into a box. And now, every single day, we ship trays out, and every day there are trays coming back with random materials back. So we've created this loop where a designer can say, I want 12 colorways, and sort it, and send 6 colorways back and keep 6. So there's no waste, and they go right back on the shelf. So that package design, combined with that really focus on sustainability has helped us.
We are running out of time, but I want to leave on kind of thinking about how you evaluate what you've created. How do you measure the success of an initiative, and how do you know when you've gotten it right?
Honestly, we're all a very vocal industry in the design industry. And we talk to designers, and when we see the adoption on not only a tool like Material Bank, but when we watch at our events or with our readers or our subscribers or our advertisers, that real feedback is like nothing else. So yes, we monitor data and KPIs and we study all that, but talking to the industry and getting out there and getting that feedback, especially when it's negative. The best feedback is when it's negative. I talk to someone and they don't like something. The best ideas come from that because I figure out how to solve that problem that they're so unhappy with, and we end up with a better product. So constant iteration, but talking to the industry, there's nothing like hands-on. I thrive on it.
Amazing. Thank you so much,
My
Adam.
pleasure.
This has been
Thanks.
incredible.
Thanks.